Well, good morning. I'm David Getz, the senior warden at St. Barnabas, and I want to just open up this morning with a few remarks before I turn it over to Five Star. There is a little history to this project. Some of you know more than I do, but I'm going to share with you, from my perspective, the relevant key aspects. So this is a development project that has been around for a while. Five Star tried to start this project a number of years ago, and we're in the process. At that time in 2007, 2008, 2009, we did negotiate an agreement with Five Star, which was signed, but because of the recession, Five Star was unable to continue with that project, so it had been on hold in a way for a while. Five Star sort of reinitiated, as far as I understand it, a few years ago, the process. And for those of you who are residents of the town of Paradise Valley, you'll know that they've gone through a planning process which led to a special use permit being granted end of last year, early this year. We, again, picked up our discussions with Five Star last summer. Our rector asked me to form sort of a group of experts, people at St. Barnabas who had been working with Five Star before and who understand and have a lot of experience with our development. I'll introduce those people just in a minute, but first let me just mention what are the objectives that we had at St. Barnabas here. The rector and I talked quite a bit about this. We really wanted to achieve a supportive, mutually beneficial, constructive, and a long-term relationship with Five Star. It's important to us, our values here, to make sure that we start off on a good foot with our new neighbors because they're going to be here for quite a while. Now, they understand that we've been here for 50 years, and I think I'm looking forward to hopefully we'll have a long-standing, another 50-year relationship. We also wanted to make sure in the practical implementation of this project that we could create a seamless and beautiful transition from our property to theirs and vice versa. So the group of, the folks who helped me, 5 of us, worked hard with Five Star to try and achieve that, and I think you'll be very pleased with the results. So let me just mention those individuals who were instrumental in our discussions, and if they're here, I'd like them to stand up. Jack Wilson, Ken Allison, Tom Hott, and John Underwood. Now, if you don't know those individuals, first off, Jack has been kind of our key representative contact with Five Star for many years. Jack is in the commercial real estate development business, and he happens to know the owner of Five Star, Jerry Ayub. Ken Allison is an architect, and Ken has lots of experience both at St. Barnabas and for the Diocese of Arizona in terms of our buildings, their design, the special use permit we have, the conditions that we operate here under with the town of Paradise Valley. Tom Hott has been our construction manager, really, in a way, construction and project manager for several of our large recent projects, and he's very familiar with the on-the-ground details of how this place was built and what's important to us in terms of our operating characteristics and environment. And finally, John Underwood was head of capital campaign for the sanctuary project, and before, John's been very involved as well in new facilities. So the hope here we had was that the 5 of us could bring together sufficient experience to collectively represent the interests of St. Barnabas and work out a good arrangement with Five Star. Starting last summer, we met a number of times with Five Star and their team. I'll introduce them before I finish, but we ended up having, I think, a very constructive and practical negotiating session that ended up in a new development agreement that we signed in January of this year. I'm going to give you the thumbnail of that in just a second. That agreement did, before we signed it, it had the approval of our vestry. We went through the vestry process, as you know, our governing board. And then finally, our rector reviewed it, gave his approval. We also ran that by our chancellor, David Carmichael, at the time. He's sort of our head lawyer, and we wanted to make sure, because it is a legal agreement, that we didn't have any unforeseen issues. So there was a thorough vetting process. We ended up signing that agreement in January, and it is now in sort of full force and effect. and will carry on for a long time. So, what's in that agreement? I'm going to mention 10 things. I'm going to try and go through this briefly. And then I'd ask you, actually, rather than talk now about the agreement, I'd like to hand it over to 5-Star and let them explain their project. We hopefully have left lots of time for questions and answers. They also, if you've noticed, have brought what I call storyboards, and we want to leave time for you to look at those around the room, and the 5-Star team will be here to answer individual questions. So, what's this agreement that we negotiated? Essentially, it's a cooperation between the two companies, or our two entities, to try and ensure that after the construction is done, that we're both happy with the results. So, 5-Star is going to do a number of things for us. First, we wanted to see if it was possible to get a gate between the Ritz-Carlton Hotel and our property. So, 5-Star will seek to put a gate in there. It's subject to the agreement of the hotel because of security issues. So if we end up with a gate, it will be a secure locked gate where only the hotel guests can go in and out. And I think you can understand from their point of view why they'd want that. 5-Star will also seek to install perimeter gates on residential areas on the north side of our property and the south side of our property, and that's to enable the residents of those areas, where there'll be private homes, again, to access St. Barnabas if they'd like to, so that if we're fortunate enough to attract them as members, they could come and worship with us. 5-Star will install a fiber optic sleeve. One of the challenges we have at St. Barnabas is high-speed internet connection. And right now, we have upgraded that connection, but we're still limited because of the physical distance to the interconnection, which is down here at the corner of Mockingbird and Lincoln. So 5-Star has agreed to install on our property, in essence, a conduit that would enable us, if we decide we'd like to connect to a high-speed fiber optic backbone that they are considering installing for their residences. So if there is that opportunity, we will be able to tap into that backbone, and of course we'll be paying for our internet service, but we have the provision now so that that's an option for us in the future, and they'll route that sleeve over to our office area. They're going to install 2 walkways into or between our properties. You'll hear from them that the wash that comes under the bridge just south of us they'll re-engineer that in line with their special use permit. They're going to re-landscape that. And we wanted to have an easy access onto and between our properties. So they'll put one walkway on our east side leading into the labyrinth area, and they're going to put another walkway over here on the south side leading up to the office area. That wash will be a walkway and will have a path in it. It'll be landscaped. It'll be common area, so it may be that there are other visitors who are walking from the corner of Indian Bend and Scottsdale Avenue on that wash. They may be able to come all the way through. In terms of our property landscaping, they will remove our existing perimeter walls and fencing on the north, east, and south sides. And again, the idea was we don't want walls to be barriers between ourselves and our new neighbors. So we're going to take those down. They will re-landscape our property from our boundary limit to the curb. You know, we have the road that runs around. So they'll put in new landscaping for us, consistent with what they're doing on their side. Again, the idea being a beautiful and seamless transition. So if you happen to go out there, you're not actually quite sure where our property ends and where theirs begins. So the idea was to open up our views. The oleander bushes, which currently are almost on 3 sides, will go, and we will be able to look out more easily. We've talked with them about the design of what they intend to do, and you'll see some representations in terms of the areas. They'll explain it, but essentially there are 3 sort of key areas. Residences on the north, the hotel property sort of over here, residences on the south. They will be building some back walls for those properties, which again will be walls that we will see on their property some 20 to 40 feet away. We wanted to make sure we had some ability to have input into the design of those walls and the materials they'll use. So they've agreed that we'll have a consultative process. They've already established a basis for that in their special use permit, and again, you'll see representations of that here, but the details of that haven't finally been worked out. So we'll have an ability to, to give our input and let them consider that, because again, they would like to have a beautiful vista for us to look at. And then that goes both ways. So we would like them to have a beautiful vista of St. Barnabas. Now, if you've been to the east side of our property, I don't know how many of you drive around there, it's not particularly beautiful if you're over there looking at us. We have some trash bins and receptacles and things. So 5 Star has agreed to contribute up to $10,000 to let us kind of beautify those and make some improvements on our property that will enhance the view from their property. And we've agreed to work together on that. We'll figure out what we want to do. We'll consult with them and make sure they're happy with it, but they've agreed to fund up to $10,000 for those specific improvements. Right, 2 more minor points. One is, it may not be obvious, you can maybe find it on the plans, but in the residential area that's on the north side, it'll extend just a bit on the east side. There are 2 houses that they have proposed, which are actually the closest to us, and we talked about the vista. I can't guarantee what it will look like, but I believe that we'll have a nice outlook over the McDowell Mountains. So they agreed to limit those 2 residences to a single story and not build 2-story houses. And again, we're trying to be, as you can imagine, sensitive to their concerns. They're a business. They're doing this to make money. They've been through a lot with the town of Paradise Valley in terms of density of that housing, but they were willing to agree to limit 2 particular houses just because it appeared to us that would benefit our view. And finally, after the construction's done, and they'll talk about that in their presentation, we'll have some new things on our property. They'll have new landscaping on theirs. Both of us are responsible for our own properties. So we'll have the responsibility to maintain the landscaping they install on our property, the new drip irrigation system they install on our property. That's ours in the long run. We'll do in essence, the operations and maintenance. And that's in many ways to keep it very clear legally who's responsible for what. So they'll maintain their property. They've committed to do that. We will maintain our property, again, because as neighbors, we want to have a beautiful, seamless transition that will remain for a long time. So that's the essence of the legal agreement that we've signed. I'd be happy to speak to anyone after 5 Star presents if you'd like, if you have specific questions about what we did or why we did it or whatnot, so please seek me out. Or alternatively, the 4 members of our committee, the other 4, Jack, Tom, Ken, and John, feel free to talk to them. So I'm going to turn it over to 5 Star. I will say I've enjoyed working with these gentlemen. My key contact has been Chris Klecka. Chris is the CFO at 5 Star. But I think their initial speaker will be Jason Withy. Jason has been their land use attorney. He's well known here in town. He's been very active with the town of Paradise Valley. So Jason, I'll let you pick up the presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, David. Thank you to the committee. It has been a very collaborative process. And in terms of where we ended up, I hope you'll share our belief that this really will be a tremendous benefit and ultimately a tremendous improvement to what's been surrounding you, so that you will see something that not only enhances what's there, but also adds to your campus. I'll start with introducing myself. My name is Jason Morris. My firm is Withy Morris, and we have been fortunate enough to represent 5 Star over 8 to 9 years off and on, because as you may be aware, this process began, as David alluded to, very early on. Started off with the entitlement case because in the town of Paradise Valley, we had to go through a complete rezoning, and the town of Paradise Valley, by and large, doesn't have commercial zoning districts. So this was a special use permit. You may or may not be familiar with the history of the property. I grew up riding on this property and have been around it and understood that this was originally sited for a hotel. It was approved back in '87 for a hotel and homes, and then it sat. And this is really the latest iteration. But in 2007, the town council ultimately approved a new Ritz-Carlton and Ritz-Carlton residences for this site. And then, you may be familiar, there was a little bit of a downturn. So nothing occurred on the property, and we were able to go back, take a look at the existing plan, and build on what was existing with a new application that we've been processing as a team over the last 18 months. So fortunately, we are finished with the entitlement process in the town of Paradise Valley, and we are now moving forward with the construction process and the pre-construction process. So what I'd like to do before I introduce the rest of the team and allow them to speak is just go over the site plan itself. The entire site is 120 acres. What's unique about this site is that it straddles two jurisdictions. So 20 acres of the property at the corner of Indian Bend and Scottsdale Road is actually in the city of Scottsdale and will go through a separate entitlement process, whereas the 100 acres in the town of Paradise Valley has already completed its entitlement process. That 100 acres, as we look, in fact, why don't we start with the church property? Oh, it even came with a laser pointer. Thank you. So, because the church is the most important aspect of this, we'll start with the church property and Mockingbird, and as we'll go in a clockwise motion and look at the residential that David alluded to immediately to your north, and that is 66 lots. Those are going to be residences that will be gated, obviously part of the Ritz community. The minimum lot size there would be 10,000 square feet. The average is about 12,000 square feet with a maximum around 20,000 square feet. So when we were talking about the closest homes in proximity to St. Barnabas, that would be the area that we were discussing. As we continue to the east, this is what's known as the Palmeraie, which is the more commercial aspect. This and this is actually going through much of its entitlement process in the city of Scottsdale now and will be phased, although what we're showing here is a complete build-out. That may change over time, but what we're focusing on now is the initial portion closest to the hotel, because this would be the hotel building, and this would be luxury shops and restaurants that will be entitled through the city of Scottsdale. These are existing buildings that you're obviously familiar with, the office complex, the Spectrum, and then the apartments and retail and restaurants up in Scottsdale Road. On the five-star property, these would be the villas. There are 94 villas that are associated with the hotel, known as the Ritz Villas. Those could be individual residents. They could also be extensions of the hotel itself. And as we go further to the south, these are a townhome project. That particular product is about 54 units, and that's the transition between the existing apartments just east of it that you can see are 4-story buildings that exist today to part of the Ritz campus. So this would be a lower density attached product. Again, as we come back around, these are 45 Ritz branded residences. So those would be slightly larger homes than the 66 homes that we discussed a little bit earlier. And those homes would have all of the amenities of the hotel and would have services from the hotel itself. Slightly larger lots, as I mentioned, which means there's an opportunity for slightly larger homes on that. And as we look at the centerpiece, it's the hotel itself. And the hotel, this is the pool area of the hotel. The hotel itself does not have any rooms. It's a lobby building, ballroom, and restaurant. And then, obviously, as you look at the campus for the hotel, it's 200 individual casita-type units. So all of the rooms will be outside of the lobby building, and we'll have walking paths and golf cart paths. So that's an overview of where we've been. That concluded the special use permit process in the town of Paradise Valley. So we're now going through the platting process and getting the individual lots approved within the town and moving through the zoning process for the commercial in the city of Scottsdale right now. So I'll pause there because I know we have lots of other things to discuss. I'll let Chris Klecka, the CFO and my client, my boss, give a little bit of where we're going and some of the design process behind this with the church. And I'll be around for questions. Thanks, Chris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us here. I think real briefly, I wanted to first introduce Brendan and Richard, who I asked to be here with us. And then I'll speak a little bit about 5-star and talk a little bit more about the hotel, and then Richard can show you what you're going to be seeing from the St. Barnabas property. So Richard Frazee first is our project manager. He has worked on a number of Ritz-Carltons and other luxury hotels over the years. He did Ritz-Carlton Half Moon Bay, Bachelor Gulch, Grand Cayman. He did Dove Mountain, the most recent Ritz-Carlton that was built here in the United States. So when we started on this process, we felt like we wanted to hire the project manager with the most experience to help us build a beautiful community here, and we think we found that with Richard. So you'll hear him speak in a minute. And then Brendan Mann is head of our residential sales team. He's a principal at the Solvere Group, and he is also, for the last 20, 25 years, specialized in selling luxury residential real estate, especially that which is tied in with a luxury hotel in, you know, a variety of different places between Hawaii, Cabo. He's been all around the world selling this type of product. So we wanted to bring Brendan and his team here to Paradise Valley to help us with our residential sales. And for those of you, if anyone has questions on the residences once the presentation is over, Brendan's here to answer any questions you have, and can walk you through what we're building. So briefly, if we could hit the next one. Just to talk a little bit about the hotel, since obviously that's the centerpiece of the development. It sits on about 20 acres, and let me see, maybe I'll use this guy here. Okay, yes, so this is the hotel property itself, and as Jason said, you know, obviously the town of Paradise Valley is very sensitive to heights and views because we enjoy, you know, Camelback Mountain to the southwest, Mummy Mountain to sort of the west, northwest. You've got the McDowell Mountains to the northeast, even Four Peaks. And so we set about trying to redesign the hotel to take advantage of the views. So as Jason said, in the main lobby building, which is this section here, there's no guest rooms. You have a ballroom, a junior ballroom. You have a specialty restaurant, which is this section here, which affronts the road that'll be coming in from Scottsdale Road. And then we have a 3-meal restaurant right here that's 2-story. Well, the restaurant's on the first floor, and then there's a lobby bar that's on the second floor, both of which overlook this pool, which, as you follow it all the way down, will have a direct line of sight towards Camelback Mountain. That was the whole point, is to try and orient the hotel as much as possible to Camelback Mountain. We've been told by our landscape architect that our pool is the longest resort pool in North America. He's the one who designed it, so we haven't validated that, but since he told us, we'll believe it. And again, it's gonna sort of cascade downward from the lobby building towards the southwest, ending in our spa building. We've got a little bit of an orchard here as you lead from the pool to the spa building. But along with the pool cascading down, you have the guest rooms that also sort of cascade down. This tier here that comes off of the pool is about 7 feet higher than this tier, which is 7 feet higher than this tier, 7 feet higher than this tier. So again, trying to capture as many views of Camelback Mountain as possible. All the buildings, all the guest rooms here are 1- and 2-story. So again, trying to keep the heights low while creating as many views as possible from as many different sites on the hotel property. We have a great lawn here for events, weddings. There's even a bit of an amphitheater as you kind of terrace up to these first guest rooms. The hotel itself is actually built on the current grade, but the grade of the site actually slopes from Lincoln and Mockingbird downward to Scottsdale Road and Indian Bend. It slopes down about 17 feet. So we're actually going against it in raising up, you know, these guest rooms here and these here as we go and slope back the other way. So this area of the hotel, there's a little bit of an amphitheater that's created, and we think a wonderful event space here. And then there's some additional event space here. Obviously, world-class Ritz-Carlton spa for both guests of the hotel and local residents to enjoy as well. Richard, maybe we could hit the next one there. And then we just included this slide here to give you a a little bit of a sampling of what the design of the hotel is going to look like. We're calling it Desert Modern. You know, it's clean lines, stone, you know, I don't want to say simple architecture, but definitely more of the Desert Modern type theme that is becoming more and more popular, and we think really blends in well with the desert that we're working with here. I think I'll stop there. You know, if you have any additional questions on the hotel, you know, I'm happy to answer them. Richard can answer them as well, but I think most importantly for you, yeah?
I was wondering, is it good that you have the residential areas, and a couple of the buildings should be one story because we got people, maybe we need buildings that are handicap accessible.
Sure.
Here.
Sure.
I think that would greatly be helpful too.
Sure. No, I appreciate that comment. Yep. So I'm going to turn it over to Richard, and more importantly for you, you know, we want to show you what you're, one more view there. That's the hotel pool. I forgot about that one. That's a little bit of the pizzazz, but that's looking back towards the main lobby building, cabanas along the sides. So that's the top part of the pool before it cascades down to the next level. So then but like I said, I'll turn it over to Richard. He can talk to you about our construction scheduling, what you should be seeing as you're looking at different points from St. Barnabas towards our property. And then, again, like I mentioned, we're all here to answer any questions you might have on the hotel and the community.
Thank you very much. Like Chris said, my name is Richard Frazee. Thank you for the opportunity to come talk to you and answer all the questions you have. Slightly informal format, so don't look for a lot of structure other than let me describe what we're doing. Two things I want to talk about with you before we get into Q&A is what are we doing and when are we doing it? Those are probably two predominant questions about...
Richard, just hold the mic closer.
Better. Is that better? Yeah. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, so what we've done, we're 4 or 5 slides here that talk about what do you see from your property. And down in the lower corner, we've actually taken an as current condition photo of this looking predominantly in the northeast direction. You can see the McDowell Mountains there. David did a good job describing about the existing fencing and the existing plantings that you have around your property, and that's what you have right now. So what we've done is imposed on that actual photo the forthcoming improvements, both in landscape and in construction beyond it. And what we're trying to demonstrate here is that we are taking out your landscaping, we're taking out your wall, and we're pushing back an additional 10 feet of area to create even a deeper area of new landscaping. The new landscaping being contiguous with the landscaping theme and elements of the overall resort. Very important to us, as David mentioned, that it's contiguous. You will not be able to determine a property line, even though there's a very specific line there. We don't want that. We want it to flow as if it was one thought, one continuous feeling as you experience a transition from walking from the church to the hotel, the church to the wash, or vice versa. So what you see here is that even after we're concluded all of our improvements, the view of the McDowell Mountains still occur in the backdrop. We promote leaving your trees in the foreground, but we take out the oleanders and put in some very lush, highly ornate landscape elements, and then right behind it then is what will be an architectural 6-foot-high masonry wall. By town ordinance, all of the walls around residential units in Paradise Valley are 6 feet high. We are proposing to keep that 6-foot-high element, but the wall itself is a very architectural masonry, low maintenance on your side, low maintenance on everybody's side, wall element to create a luxury feel of what you would see in the foreground. And then you barely see it, but they're actually in there. The single-story homes that we described in the earlier part of the presentation are actually in this photo. So if you look at before and after, the introduction of the homes don't pop out as new obstructions or new elements in your long-distance views towards the McDowells. All of the homes along Mockingbird and the 2 additional lots that are adjacent to the church are, in fact, limited to single-story height construction. So that's an ordinance, not a request. It's actually in the documents with the town, so you can be assured We're not going to get 2-story tall product along your back wall at the church or along Mockingbird. This is the very same photo, but we just wanted you to see what will it look like before the planting goes in. Just so that we're not trying to cover everything up with a beautiful landscaping. Yes, we are, but here are the actual number of homes that you would see in a single story in front of you. This is a home way adjacent across the parcel, but you can see even at 2 stories in height beyond the perimeter requirements, the second story is well below the view line of the McDowell Mountains. I'm sorry for being in your view. Let's keep going so we don't run out of time here. Okay, this view is once again, if you take your labyrinth area behind the church as an actual photo, and then we take the very same thing where we take that photo and include what's happening with the hotel beyond it. Again, there's hotel elements here to the far right. There is a well-engineered drainage wash that happens in the center, and you'll get the last part of the single-story homes that are happening due east of the church property. Click through that again, Chris, and let's show him. Okay, without the landscaping, this are the casita units of the hotel. There's an engineered wash that runs between the hotel and the residential product, and here is the backyard wall of that last single-family home. David had mentioned pedestrian access. You'll see in this area, and we can talk about it more in plan view if you wish, that this neighborhood connects to this public circulation. The church's access to the well-completed landscaped sidewalk washes in this area. So we are striving and will accomplish pedestrian access from the church, pedestrian access from the hotel, and pedestrian access from the adjacent residential, all to kind of collect here in a well-finished space that acts as the channel to handle the 100-year flood. There's been a few of them over the last 100 years. We're planning for probably a few more. And as you see the floods that come under the bridge now on Mockingbird, it kind of just fans out over the existing site. We're going to actually correct that, create an engineered channel that takes the storm flow from the existing bridge on Mockingbird all the way to existing storm inlets at the corner of Indian Bend and Scottsdale Road across the street from the railroad park. So it's both parts on either side of the property are concluded. We're simply connecting the two dots with the storm water management channel. Next. This is slightly looking, almost similar view. It's just slightly looking more from the center of your labyrinth. There again, our objective is to show you that we're not blocking the due east view. Can I do same? You'll start to see the single-story home barely above the 6-foot wall that's around the perimeter. Next. Okay, this is looking north. If you were outside in the side parking lot, this is what you see looking north. There's a small 3-foot, 4-foot high masonry wall, not a lot of landscaping in front of it. And what we're trying to show here is that because of the existing right-of-way setback to the east of Mockingbird, our SUP has an additional 50 feet of setback beyond the right-of-way setback before the resort wall can start. And where the resort wall starts, there's even a rear yard setback beyond that before the first home can be built. So it's nearly 100 feet of setback from Mockingbird to the first home, and that first home is then also limited to single-story height. Next photo will kind of give you a sense of this is actually what we're trying to show here is Mockingbird. This is how far it's set back from Mockingbird to where the rear yard wall would start. And way back here is where the rear wall of the house would start, that house being single story. So a very open view to the northeast, to the Judson area and the Mummy Mountain area. Next. Oh, that's a good one. Okay, that's it. Okay, timing. And then I want to get into questions here. Timing. When are we going to be doing all this? Go back to the site plan, maybe, Chris. The timing is when are we starting to move dirt? There's obviously a lot of dirt work to be done to create 122 acres of new luxury development. Our plans are yet this summer, we will be out there moving earthwork. By ordinance with the town, there's a very specific sequence in how we can build this resort, and we agree with it. In that, what we want to do first and early on is, once the contouring is accomplished by the earthwork, is we want to put in the permanent perimeter wall. There won't be a chain link construction fence, there won't be a ratty construction theme or environment for the duration of the project, because the first project to be done is the resort wall itself. So all the way from Broadstone, apartment buildings, all the way around all three sides of the project, we will put in that wall as the first vertical project after the earthwork, yet to happen this year. That then allows kind of a definitive barrier of beyond the wall of building the hotel, building the villas, and building the Palmeraie Shopping Center starting early 2017. About a 2-year project for construction of the hotel, construction of the villas, construction of phase 1 of Palmeraie says that we were targeting a grand opening of all 3 of those primary elements by the end of 2018. So from your perspective, you would see predominant activity happening there starting this summer for about a 30-month period. There are no new entrances, no off of Mockingbird onto any part of the Ritz-Carlton property other than emergency access. But as it relates to day-to-day entrances, we have not introduced and do not have any new turn-in and turn-outs off of Mockingbird. There's a new signalized intersection going to happen here at Quail Run. So you'll see a new traffic signal here in addition to the traffic signal here and here being retimed in sequence with the new traffic signal at Quail Run. And a lot of you travel Indian Bend. There's a partial roundabout here. It's actually just kind of a wide donut in the road. We're actually going to rebuild that and allow this to be the primary entrance into the resort from the north. So the third is an entrance off of Scottsdale. It's already signalized. It's called 6750. We'll probably come up with a more glamorous name than 6750. But the entire community then uses the finished development through those 3 primary entrance points. So as it relates to will you see a lot of different or added traffic turning into our resort from your side, the answer is no, because there is no opportunity there to turn into it. So right here is the existing bridge that spans across Mockingbird. And then from here it just kind of fans out during a storm event to actually run into a channel that's behind the Spectrum office building and behind the Broadstone. So the storm that happens here fans out across the site, hits this channel, and kind of dissipates into nowhere. We're doing a much better Town of Paradise Valley approved and City of Scottsdale approved channel, but this channel is over 80 feet wide. So when you look at the scale of this, it's kind of hard to determine from the site plan, but there's an additional 80 feet of setback or an 80 feet of planting area on basically one full side and one half side of the church before you'll even get to the improvements of the resort wall itself. And 80 feet may sound like a lot, but when you look at it in scale, what you have now to your oleanders, it's going to seem like a long way to take down the oleanders and then go another 80 feet and then see the resort wall. So I think it will look very expansive from what you see now, and it will give kind of an open feeling to the perimeter of your property on those 3 sides. So that channel, engineered to handle the 100-year flow, goes east, north, and then right here are existing stormwater inlets that go under Scottsdale Road, through the train park, and then this channel on the north side, just right there by Ruth Chris, goes all the way to Indian Bend. So it completes a long-term storm management design element by us putting this channel in. But obviously that channel is dry predominantly all the time except during an event. So we're going to landscape it with trees, sidewalks. It's ADA compatible. There was a question about ADA compatibility. This wash is ADA compatible so that if you want to ride your bike, walk your dog, cut the corner from your home here to walk to Ruth Chris or whatever your favorite thing to do is, you can now do it through this channel. Or as part of the upcoming town projects, there are also sidewalk and bike lane improvements happening on all 3 sides of the project as part of upcoming town projects, Town of Paradise Valley projects. So I'm about out of time, and I want to leave lots of time for questions because it's better to answer questions you have and let us know what more information we can provide to you. But I thank you for the opportunity, and I'll open it up to questions, and David can maybe chair this, and we'll go with, yes, ma'am.
As you were talking about the setbacks and the fencing, I
Yes, ma'am.
thought it was to the north, yeah, right in there. That doesn't look like 100 feet right there.
Well, they're from the existing, and it's not, from the existing curb to the current right-of-way is about 17 feet. And then they're from the right-of-way line, there's an additional 50 feet of setback on the resort property to the wall. And then there's an extra 20 feet of setback to the first home. So horizontally, how far from the curb to the back wall of a home, it's about 100 feet. And it's actually a greater distance on Lincoln Boulevard by an additional 25 feet. So these setbacks, well, again, it's kind of hard to get scale in the 122 acre format, but these setbacks are greater than any other setback you'll see along Lincoln or other roads here in Paradise Valley. So when you start pacing off 75 feet back to a wall, it's a pretty good distance, and that then introduces the opportunity for several layers of landscaping to occur in those setbacks.
I want to thank you for your presentation. It's very thorough. But I do have one question.
Absolutely.
You're talking about dispersing a lot of the water from the storms. Is the corporation doing anything about saving or capturing rainwater to provide? You have a lot of plantings that are going to take a lot of irrigation, and what we like to do is preserve as much water as possible.
Sure. The town of Paradise Valley has a planting ordinance or a planting, I don't know where it is, Jason, but there's a plant palette approved by Paradise Valley that is water and drought sensitive, and we are following those provisions about what kind of planting we are going to have along the perimeter, what kind of plantings we're going to have in the different neighborhoods. But to answer your question specifically, we are required to retain all of the stormwater that hits our site so that any rain that hits the 122 acres has to stay on the 122 acres and can't leave. So the only water that's actually traversing the site is that which we receive from the west. And there's actually a little bit of stormwater that comes in when you look at stormwater maps. I don't want to get too boring on you, but when you look at stormwater maps, there's a little bit of stormwater flow that comes from the southeast. That's the only water we're allowing to leave the site. The rest of the water stays on the site. We don't have a specific plan yet to do stormwater reclamation and reuse on irrigation, but the owner is actively looking at how do we water our plants with on-site water storage. But
Eileen with a question.
we're fully sensitive to what you just said. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you, David. You said preparation of the land is going to start this summer.
Yes.
How are you planning on containing the dust?
Mm-hmm.
And water is now, if you read the paper yesterday, at bad levels.
Yeah.
How are you going to help us with that?
Fortunately, the county and the state and the city, there are many layers of control on dust and construction phase activities. There's what's called a SWIPS program. It has to do with how do you maintain dust, how do you keep mud or dirt on the site and not on the city streets, how often do we send a street sweeper around the perimeter. All of those are well defined by town and county ordinances. So the basic answer to your question is there's a lot of, I'll call it science, and how you dampen and maintain moisture content on the earthwork as you're moving it up and down and around and in and out so that dust is non-existent. Because you'll see bulletin billboards around the site as required by the county say, if you see dust, call this number. And there's actually a neighborhood invite with a very specific phone number that if you think it's a little too dusty, you call the number and corrective action is assured.
I'm going to move around areas just to make sure areas get a chance.
Thank you for being here. Speaking of dust, I'm assuming there's going to be some underground parking,
Yes, ma'am.
okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm wondering if you could explain to us in what method and where or how you're going to remove all of the dirt and which way it's going to be transported away from the site.
Great question. You must be a civil engineer by background. No. We have actually gone through a detailed study of what's called a cut and fill to contour garages, contour, as Chris mentioned, an elevated lobby, elevated casitas. In our first pass, it actually generated that the site was an export, what's called an export condition, meaning we had more dirt than we needed. And we were then faced with a challenge of trucking dirt off the site and its impact and ramifications from that. That's not what we're doing. By engineer, we have what's called balanced the site and raising some grades, contouring some grades differently. We have this site, even though we're moving 400,000 cubic yards of dirt, none of that is leaving the site with the exception of a small amount we're donating to the railroad park so they can get more parking. So the simple answer is we've re-engineered our site grading to minimize or predominantly have non-existent export of dirt.
Richard, you might just point out the parking area that is planned underground.
I'm sorry, I was by the audio. There's an underground parking garage here of 300 or 400 spaces under the hotel. There's a connected underground parking under the condominium villa product of about 300 spaces. And then under the Palmeraie, in addition to what's we call it street level teaser parking, there's over 1,000 car parking garage under this retail. So we believe we have adequately addressed parking so that neighborhoods don't get concerned that we're injecting cars that have nowhere to park. The beauty of it is we've also eliminated the asphalt parking lots, that we want to plant the areas with function lawns and things of that nature and not have them be black asphalt.
More questions?
Thank you. You had mentioned that you're going to build a permanent wall, which I think is commendable. And if your grand opening is 2.5 years from this summer, would it be possible also to plant permanent landscaping on the outside so that some of the activity that's going in would be somewhat camouflaged and the plants would have a chance to mature?
Boy, I'm going to hire several of you as part of my team because you're exactly correct. Once the wall is built and the town has finished moving some curbs around as part of a bike lane sidewalk project around the perimeter, we will immediately plant the perimeter. We agree. We want as much growth, cure-in, maturity time on the perimeter landscaping as possible. What we absolutely don't want is the day before we open to have freshly planted little pots of wimpy plants around the perimeter that will be not very impressive to any of us. So Project 1B or 1A, Project 1 being put the wall up, Project 1B is as soon as the back of curb is settled down from the town projects, we will go in with permanent irrigated, highly maintained landscaping so that by the end of 18, we would hope there's a year and a half of growth on that improvement. Yes, sir.
Hi. Are you building to platinum green, and are you using PV?
We are striving for LEED certified. We haven't finalized the design about how far beyond LEED certified we can get. Platinum is a very difficult level to achieve in a luxury resort environment as compared to other project types, office buildings and things like that. We are LEED sensitive. Our design team is LEED certified. I don't have a specific level of LEED certification that we will have met until we get a little bit further in design, except we are LEED sensitive. LEED is LEED.
I'll just give a quick answer.
Yeah.
So LEED measures the environmental design and sensitivity. So depending upon the building materials you use, how much water is used, how much electricity is used, how much of the environment is impacted by what you're building. LEED is actually a private organization that certifies, and if you pay them, they will come and certify your project depending upon their level, whether it's gold, whether it's silver, whether it's platinum. One of the things that's difficult for LEED certification in a project like this is it's mixed use. So you would have to take in the entire neighborhood, and one of the things that LEED looks for is density. Because density means you have more people in one place, you don't have as many trips generated. This wouldn't meet LEED certification for density because the town of Paradise Valley is at the other end of that spectrum, which is much larger lots and lower densities.
Richard just mentioned one of the questions was solar photovoltaic. Any plans for that?
We have had active discussion on how do we capture solar voltaic opportunities, especially when you look at some large roof elements. So there's no specific definition of how much solar voltaic, but the owner of the project, Jerry Ayub, is very excited about solar and about alternative energy sources. So I don't have anything specific to report, but it is an active topic that we're talking about. Let me backtrack on the LEED thing. LEED is also an operational issue. Ritz-Carlton is owned by Marriott Ritz-Carlton Corporation, very active in how to run resorts within a LEED compatible format about recycling, energy use, elements of that nature. So as it relates to, are we bringing somebody in who is energy smart, LEED smart? And the answer is yes, through the Marriott Ritz-Carlton Corporation.
Just quickly, have the lots been priced out yet?
Just briefly on the residential. Residential phase one is the villa product, which is launching this summer. And Brendan is around afterwards to answer any questions you have after that. But this residential product and this residential product are on different timelines, not dramatically different than the condominiums. But to answer your question, these have not been priced yet, or announcements of how this is going to be implemented has not been announced yet, given that we're kind of focused on this villa product for the next month or so, and then you'll see some additional information come out later this summer, this fall, on the balance of the residential.
What style homes are you going to require? Desert modern, like you showed?
What's important in a Ritz-Carlton branded residential community is variety in what we call the streetscape. So that as you drive down the neighborhood of a luxury residential product in a Ritz-Carlton community is that no two homes look alike, no two colors are alike, no two styles are exactly alike. Other than there may be very repetitious floor plans, the architectural style and the architectural finishes on those floor plans will vary. So to answer your question is, if you didn't have a great feeling for what you saw in the hotel lobby, don't be alarmed that that's what your home is going to look like if you buy a home in the branded neighborhood. There will be a variety of architectural styles. What's important is that there's continuity and compatibility in the architectural styles, so that your neighbor's pink house doesn't conflict with your purple house. You know, that's what we don't want. But there will be a wide variety of desert-compatible, warm, luxurious, timeless, elegant architectural aspects to the residential neighborhoods.
When this project's fully built out for the residences, and based on the size of the house and occupancy rates, how many new residents, people, will there be added to Paradise Valley?
94, 45, and 66 is roughly 200 residences at an occupancy of 2 or 3 people per home. So
about 700 people?
400 to 600 new residents, most of which are probably already here in Paradise Valley, would be my guess. We're getting a strong interest from existing Paradise Valley residences to stay in Paradise Valley, but to capture the opportunity of living within the resort.
Well, but then people would backfill.
True statement. Right.
So you're talking about, to a community of about 13,000, you're going to be adding 700 to maybe 800 people?
Yes, sir.
So that's, you're increasing the size of the community by about, so just to know, by 2020, about 5 to 8% of all of the residents of Paradise Valley are going to live in that square. Just, that's something to think about for people that have, like myself, that live in Paradise Valley.
I'm concerned about the commercial part. Scottsdale, has that plat all been approved?
We are into that process as we speak.
Well, does that mean setbacks and things like that? The only reason
yes.
I'm really concerned is
on
that
Scottsdale?
over recent times, the setbacks in Scottsdale have become so skimpy. And all along that part of Scottsdale Road, it's very generous. And so those buildings that are right next to Scottsdale Road, will they appear on the sidewalk?
No, and here's why. Okay. One, there is a setback requirement as part of the approval process of Scottsdale, but more importantly, as you travel up and down Scottsdale, you'll see a very large, not very attractive 69 kVA APS transmission line. That transmission line runs above grade here where my pointer is pointing. It's our desire to work with APS to bury that transmission line. To bury that transmission line in itself causes what's called an exclusive 30-foot easement. So that in itself pushes the buildings back 30 feet. Then there's a non-exclusive easement for all the other utilities, which is another 8 feet, and then you have building setbacks beyond that. So to answer your question, by nature of dropping the transmission line or creating the easement for it, it'll push the face of these buildings several feet back from the face of Scottsdale than what you've experienced on other developments.
We're at 10 o'clock, and I'm going to suggest that we sort of stop the mic business. The 5-star representatives are going to be here, and I encourage you to take a look at their storyboards and keep asking questions. Bear in mind that a lot of what's happened is approved and done and has been governed by the regulations of the town of Paradise Valley. The Scottsdale portion is not, and as individuals, I think you're all welcome to participate in that public process as it plays out. The church, our policy here in general is we do not get involved as a community in these matters as St. Barnabas, except when we try to, with the town of PB, express the fact that we have reached a mutually supportive agreement with 5-star. As individuals, you're free to do as you like, but the church officially tries to stay out of the political spectrum of lobbying for or against. So I want to just end by saying we're very happy with the agreement that we negotiated with Chris and his team. We have to bear in mind this property has been empty for a long time, and we've gotten used to, in one sense, that. We don't own that property. 5-star owns that property, and they have a right to develop it. I think that they've come up with a very tasteful project. I think personally it will add to the town of Paradise Valley, and I think we are going to have a good neighbor who has respected the kind of issues that are important to us, and hopefully you'll feel that we've done a reasonable job to try and ensure that we are a good neighbor. We do want to attract additional members to St. Barnabas. The 600-800 people, we don't know how many of them might be interested, but we would like to offer our service here as a place of worship to be open, to encourage people to come. That's the spirit in which our rector and I have decided or tried to conduct these negotiations with 5-star, and they've been very receptive. So I'd just like to thank Jason, Chris, Richard, and Brendan. Thank you very much. Please carry on, and they'll be here.